As the colors change to fall, the shows just keep getting brighter on Global Voice Broadcasting. Shows about everything that matters to you, from love, living, and life. If you're talking about it, we're talking about it this fall on Global Voice Broadcasting. Don't miss a second. Welcome to the world of Cabarabia, the world where Broadway, jazz, comedy, and pop share the spotlight, and a 2-drink minimum. With your host, producer, director Clifford Bell, keeping the world safe for live performances in intimate settings on Global Voice Broadcasting.
And welcome back. Thank you all for listening and watching today. Welcome to Cabarabia on the Global Voice Broadcasting Network. This is my weekly rumination on all things that are relevant to the nightclub world. I have been a very prolific producer and director in the nightclub community for a very long time. And I wanted to do this podcast because there are so many aspects about what goes into keeping the nightclub world alive that I find endlessly fascinating. So I'm really excited about the show we have for you today. The topic is, I'm calling it, What Did You Think? And it's a discussion of the art of reviewing. And I have 3 really excellent leading journalist reviewers with us here in the studio today. We have Mr. Rob Stevens, who, for anybody that's from the Los Angeles community from the last 25 years or so, is very familiar with his reviews and his award ceremony called the ROBBIEs, which we'll get into later. He's been living outside of LA for a while, but he's back now, so welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We have Jonathan Widran, who's one of the leading jazz music critics. I'm especially excited to include Jonathan in the discussion because a lot of times people misperceive the world of cabaret to be only Broadway, only Great American Songbook type of stuff. But I find that more and more the world of jazz is merging with the world of cabaret nightclubs. And so I'm very interested to get your perspective on the discussion. And here we have Mr. Elliot Zwiebach, who is a reviewer for Cabaret Scenes, the Bible of the cabaret world. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. I guess we'll just jump in, and I'll introduce you to the gentlemen one by one, and we'll get an idea of who each of them are, and then we'll start a little discussion around it. First up, Jonathan. Okay. I recently met Jonathan. Actually, I've known about you for a few years. I'd noticed your byline on things, and we have mutual friends, and I followed what you had liked and when you had liked it. Good. So we met because you were brought on to help with my friend Lauren White's album that we worked on. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Jonathan Widran, and I have a unique, diverse freelance writing career, but the foundation of it was writing about what we call contemporary jazz, which can be anything from modern-day traditional jazz to what they call smooth jazz, and I know people sometimes don't like that term, but I have a very diverse musical palette, and I started writing in 1989 for a publication called LA Jazz Scene, which is still in existence, and then within a few months started doing a column called Night Rhythms, and was at the clubs every night, and doing this. I wasn't making much money, but I was meeting great musicians and just being treated nicely by people on the scene, and it was a different scene. This is like in the early 90s. But from there, I just diversified. I started writing for Jazz's Magazine and Downbeat and Music Connection, which are some associations I still have, and other things. And from there, evolved into, to make more money, just to be able to just do this, doing a lot of PR writing, and that started with a lot of jazz projects, doing bios and press releases and campaigns, and then evolved into all other kinds of music because I have a diverse, taste. But but jazz is kind of like the foundational essence of what I do, and a lot of people only know me from that, and I'm fine because it's a great art form in all its forms. So,
how did you get? Do you think focused in that area? What was?
I have a friend who lives up here. His name is Dan, and we knew each other from 6th grade, and he went to UCSD, and I went to UCLA, and a few years after we graduated college, he's in software, and I'm just floundering as a writer trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, and he introduces me to this thing called contemporary jazz, and at that time that meant David Sanborn, Bob James, those kind of artists can work, contemporary. He starts playing me guys like that, or David Benoit, and the Rippingtons, which is another contemporary jazz group started in the '80s. And I just loved it because it was like pop music with instrumental, with a little improvisation, and I fell in love with this form of music. And so for one whole year, went every week to a show, and I thought, this is costing a lot of money, so if there's a way I could, and I was trying to write scripts and do the typical LA thing at the time, and having some, success, but it was difficult. And so I found, he started writing for a paper in San Diego, and because we're very competitive, I found LA Jazz Scene, and he did well in software for a long time, and I was still trying to figure out, so I needed to make it evolve to be able to start making money doing it. But that's kind of how it started, just out of just this passion for this form of music that a few years earlier I didn't really know existed. But I grew up listening to pop music, so there was a connection there.
So you've seen the scene evolve quite a bit over the last...
Well, the clubs come and go. I mean, God, in '89 when I first started, Catalina's was there, but it was on Cahuenga, and then there was Vine Street Bar and Grill. There was that other place you mentioned. At my place, there was Lake Cafe, which is my favorite place in Sherman Oaks, and the earthquake took a few of those out back about 20 years ago, and so it has evolved. And one of the complaints has been that it's hard to have jazz clubs sustain in LA, and it's been hard. Fortunately, Vibrato has been a good one for some years now, since at least 10 years, and others. But there's not a lot. Vitello's has that room now, but those are more recent, I would say, and just over the years. From the early clubs, like, they just sort of don't exist, except Catalina's in the new venue. So things come and go. It's hard to stay in business.
We've been having an ongoing discussion here in this series that I'm calling Cabarabia about the bridge between the cabaret world and the jazz world. And I believe that the new frontier is the hybrid of the two. You see people who are more accepted as jazz artists, like Jane Monheit and stuff, do very theme-oriented shows, to get a more commercial audience that way.
Right.
And you see people who are maybe come from a more Broadway theatrical background do music that's more jazz tinged because general audiences appreciate it more.
Right.
So it's interesting to see the marriage and the hybrid evolve.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot. I have seen Jane, and even lesser known artists. I was invited to a show at Catalina recently by someone named Mark Miller, and his father was a Motown songwriter named Ron
Mark
Miller.
Arthur Miller.
Mark Arthur Miller. And he did a show where he was telling stories about growing up and his dad, and weaving his own personal story in with his dad's Motown songs, like "Touch Me in the Morning" and those sort of things, and "For Once in My Life." And
Who Can I Turn To?
Yeah,
For Once in My Life.
Other
For Once
songs,
in My
yeah.
Life,
And then other tunes related to Motown. So he put together a show, but it was at a jazz club with a jazz funk context, like contemporary jazz, and all that. And when I go to Catalina, sometimes it'll be like just where it's just playing jazz and doing a set list, and other times it'll just be where people are telling a story, or the show you produced for Joanna that was just Joanna Tatum, where it's jazzy, like there's an element, but they're also weaving songs into stories, and it's it seems like there's not a lot of distinction. I know people are purists and worry about that, but
what has been your experience of people that do get their backs up about old school jazz and people who want boundaries observed?
Well, I get into, sometimes it depends where you go. Like if you go to a show that's a straight ahead jazz show, and they say, "So what do you do?" And I say, "I write for Jazzes, I write for these magazines." "Oh, what do you cover?" And then all of a sudden you find out that they hate what they call smooth jazz or contemporary, the funky stuff that got me into this before I started really doing everything. And then they hate it, so you just sort of tailor your conversation. But there's these people that they only will write about one thing, and they'll only go see one thing, and they'll denigrate that the other art form even exists.
Right.
And I think jazz people could be like that with cabaret, like, well, it's just so too artsy or whatever. It's not like really, like jazz is just this high art form, and we're just, so like hybrid. I think it's almost like when I tell musicians about that, they say that's more of a reflection of them than the actual music. To most musicians, these top musicians who do both or can do both, they just say they're just making music and doing what they love.
Yeah, they don't like I find that the people I know and that I work with don't like the distinction.
Yeah.
Don't like the chauvinism.
Right. They like just doing what they do and however it falls. And a lot of really great artists evolve and try different things on their recordings and in their shows that they do, and I think it's great. And because I'm such a fan of music and all types of art forms, I think, to me, it's exciting when there's sort of a little hybrid going on.
Right. I really wanted to do this subject because I find the power of the press fascinating. I wanted to do this whole podcast idea because I wanted to discuss the various aspects to being a performer, making music, making money at it, as you say. And it takes a lot to keep a club alive, to build an audience, to have people that are good, to to bring new blood in, blah, 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 blah. But one of the really, really powerful components of that is press coverage. And, you find that in many ways, it's the determining factor if something is a perceived success or not, is what gets written.
Right. I remember one contemporary jazz musician, and I was very young, still doing it, starting out. He says, "It's amazing how much power you have," and it's almost like if something's in print. And a lot of these musicians I started writing about had not been written about before. So I realized it was more for me about just doing positive, making a positive impact, not trying to denigrate and knock somebody, but just help them almost. Not because I loved it and what they were giving me was great. It was like passing something along, and I had this outlet to do that. So,
you're making people visible, all of you. I mean, that's what the art of it is to me. You're particularly live performing that comes and goes. If it's not recorded, if it's not designed to be broadcast media, it disappears with the people, in the memory of the people, unless you get those profile articles.
And when I started, when you're talking about places like at my place, there was no YouTube, so people could not take their phone out and record something and put it somewhere for posterity. It was, you read about it or you just were there and remembered it. You didn't have that other way. Now we can chronicle things where anyone could see it.
I'm interested, Jonathan, how do you feel like the glut of the internet and people blogging and all the smaller ways that people review things being out there, how does that impact somebody that has ties to an actual publication?
Well, I haven't lost any work. In fact, because I've just diversified beyond just where I started, I'm able to, I still get a lot of work, and the PR work I do, and people had hired me to do the press, behind the scenes press, the less glamorous, but that sort of stuff. I still get a lot of that work, and I think I just started early enough where it was actually meaningful, where it wasn't like just every person that could just put on a website something like that. But I have a friend who was a sports journalist who became very limited and had to get out of the business because he didn't have an outlet. So I think I just diversified enough. I started early enough. And also the other thing, I always wanted a job at a big record company doing something like this. And it turned out better because as the jazz world, especially constricted with the major labels, a lot of people lost really good jobs. And I didn't have a really good job, but I was able to still keep working through. And as the economy was bad a couple years ago, it started getting better. Gigs come and go, but somehow it always just I'm able to sustain it. And it's kind of just, I think, doing a good job and being passionate. Maybe there's a lot of luck involved, but that hasn't hurt me that much. I'm kind of surprised, actually.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about the whole internet revolution is that it's made everything so much more democratic, that everybody's on an equal playing field. And, it's destroyed economy. It's destroyed the ability to, hoard money or be in power. But it has opened the doors to everybody to be found, to be seen, to be heard.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
No, I love it. In fact, a lot of the work I do when I get hired to do bios and PR in any genre, jazz included, they'll send, you won't have to get product. They don't have to send CDs. Everything is so immediate. You can just, here's a link, SoundCloud. You can listen. You can watch their videos. You feel like there's an immediacy you can have.
Right.
Whereas back in the old days, I was writing on a word processor, printing stuff out, and then they'd have to retype it, and there was all these typos in LHS, I remember.
Right.
And all these, it was very, and then, or sending a disc, like a diskette, which gets mashed in the mail. So I'm not that old, but I feel like, kids coming up, what the hell's a diskette?
We've seen a lot of changes,
haven't
haven't we?
Yeah, the reviewing is how you get, the email changed everything, made our job so much easier. I don't know, thinking back to, Stephen King supposedly still writes on a real typewriter, and I guess he's just used to that, but I don't know how you write a 1,000-page book and not edit. I don't know how they do it, but it's magic, But it helps us.
All right, well, let me move around the table a little bit now
Okay.
here. I'd like to introduce you all to Elliot Zwiebach. Elliot, you are really the newcomer to this scene and to this conversation.
Yes, I started reviewing 5 years ago.
Yes.
In September '08.
And I have had a wonderful experience of you because you actually come to a lot of my stuff, and it's always wonderful to have you there. And tell us how you got involved.
I always had an interest in what I now know is called the Great American Songbook, and certainly also in musical theater. And I used to go to the Gardenia quite often to see people I knew, and I went there one night to see Barbara Brussel, and I was alone, so I talked to the man next to me, which is one of the nice things about cabaret. It's all very chummy. And he turned out to be Peter Levy, the publisher of Cabaret Scenes. And I knew that there was a local reviewer out here, Les Traub, but I said, well, how do I become a reviewer? And he said, well, why don't you review Barbara's show? And if we like it, the review, we'll post it online and publish it. And so I borrowed a pad and pencil from the waiter, Ernie, I think.
Right, probably.
And I wrote a review. I took notes, and on the way out, I mentioned to Barbara that I was going to write the review, and she said, always get a set list. And that was good advice, because I don't know how long it would have taken me to learn that, but I always get a set list, and I always have them list composers and lyricists, so I don't have to look it up.
Except with me.
Sometimes with you.
Yeah. So you know, I want to commend you or acknowledge you or whatever, because you, I feel, are really doing a very important job in the cabaret community of giving visibility to people, because you're very dutiful about going to shows and giving people their sort of quintessential feedback on what their show is like and who they are in the marketplace. And I know that there's a good 30 or so performers that you, in my mind, have legitimized with the coverage you've given them.
Thank you.
And I think that's very important.
Well, like Jonathan said, it's important to kind of discover or uncover and reveal new people. And I started going to the open mic at the Gardenia to see who I might review. And so when I hear somebody, even now, or maybe it's more especially now, when I hear someone come in and sing and I think they're fabulous, I give them a card and say, if you do a show, call me, because I want to review you. Allison Freeman would be one of the examples recently of someone who's a fabulous singer, and I couldn't wait to hear her do a whole show. So I do listen and like to discover people, if you will.
You know, you're also funny because you...
Thank you.
Well, you haven't heard what I'm going to say. Because you're very specific about what you like. So, you know, it's as opposed to somebody like a Jonathan, who I have the experience of, you know, his resume is, that his bio is everybody from Elton John to, you know, all the jazz greats, blah, 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 blah. A lot of wide range of musical tastes, where you're very clear that you like traditional.
Right. The closer someone sticks to the melody, as it was written, the happier I am with it. The farther they get from the melody, the less happy I am.
I agree with that.
And that's just the way I was brought up. I was brought up on very good music in the 50s and pre-Beatles music, before rock, I should say. And that's the kind of music I like. But I'm capable of reviewing other kinds of music on its, when I can review the singer on their merits.
Right. Every once in a while somebody fools you, though, because I remember Rena Strober, who was a beautiful Broadway-type girl, very a traditional musical theater talent, beautiful soprano voice, beautiful legit sound, did a song that you were like, oh, I love this. This is one, I'm not familiar with this. And it turned out to be like The Doors or something like that that she had done in a very...
Yes, once at the open mic, somebody did a beautiful song. And then at the end, she said it was an Amy Winehouse song. And had I known that at the beginning, I would have listened differently. So I can be fooled.
Yeah.
But when I have a set list, I can't be fooled.
That's why you want the set list.
Partly.
So I also know that you have been spreading your wings a little bit, testing the waters as a performer, which is an interesting thing.
As I said, I started going to the open mic at the Gardenia to find who I might review. And one night, the hostess, Carrie Kelsey, said, "Elliot, do you sing?" And the answer was really no. I sang for my own amusement, and I wasn't amused. But thank you all for laughing. But 99 out of 100 nights, I would have said, no, I don't sing. And that night, I said, I'll think about it. And that literally changed my life. That was about 6 months after I started reviewing. And I sang for 6 months without lessons, and then was so bad, even I decided that I needed lessons, and a friend offered to give me lessons, and I've been plateauing at higher points since then. And I have to mention that Clifford did produce a show I did last May, for which I thank you.
Elliot with a Z. It was packed. Give the people what they want. Yes, that was about 6 months ago.
It was in May.
Yeah,
May 4th.
May 4th. So 6 months and a week.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Jonathan, you've been sneaking off to perform as well. You want to tell us a little bit about the Fred Zone?
Yeah. That's so funny. I have a friend. I've done karaoke over the years many times, but then 2003 I met a guy who was like a very kindred spirit. We became best friends, and he still is. And we thought, well, what's a good way to just hang out together, like on weekends, and just not spend too much money and just have a blast. And the Burbank Holiday Inn, the big two tower, they had karaoke in this room with a big stage. And we got to know the people that did the karaoke there. And we'd go a couple times a week, and you'd have like a little Diet Coke for $2, and you just have great entertainment, nice people. And so I've been doing that, not every week now, but I mean, we've been doing this for, we've auditioned for shows and got on one that then they didn't air, the America's Got Talent. But but the funny part about it, Matt Pearson, who's like a jazz producer who used to work at Warner Brothers, he runs into me at the Grammys one day, and he's just, everyone looks at my Facebook page, goes, "Who is Fredzo?" and everyone's like a joke, and so everyone's, "Who's this person?" And Fredzo is just his nickname, and we call ourselves the Freds because both his name is Fred and our dad's names are Fred. So, but karaoke's fun and not trained, and I do it just because it's fun. I love, and we sing from 67 to like 82. That's our range of one-hit wonders and songs from Soul Man to 867.
But you gotta have a gimmick.
And we don't go. Yeah, if someone does 90s, 2000s, I might like the song, but I can't do that. I can't. And, it's just it's too much work. So anyway.
So I love that. I love that the reviewers actually have their secret performing side. Very nice. I'm going to take a minute and do my little weekly listings that I do, and then I will introduce you to Mr. Rob Stevens. This next section we call 1001 Cabarabia Nights, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about a few shows I have coming up. I've produced, I think, all of these. Not always these. This list isn't only things I produce, but this one happens to be. On Friday, November 15th, we're doing my next Clifford Bell Here and Now. It's a series I do that showcases usually an established performer with some up-and-coming people. It's my way to develop and discover new people. Roxy Trotter, Karen Benjamin, Ivy Jones, and Jackie Gibson. Jackie Gibson, who I've just started working with, who's wonderful. Do you know her? Gorgeous voice.
No,
you have to come hear her. She's got a great voice. Then on November 17th, I'm doing a Cabarabia Spotlight, which will feature Jackie Gibson more and a couple other people I haven't booked yet. Then November 21st, we have the Party Pack, Beverly Mickens Party Pack. And I'm really excited to announce that we're going to have Rich Scheidner. When I first started this series in August, one of the first shows was a tribute, a discussion of Beverly Mickens' Party Pack, which is kind of an alternative evening of kind of rock music and storytelling and stand-up. And the headliner for that night was supposed to be Rich Scheidner, and we had him in studio here being interviewed, and as promoting the show that was later in that week. And as we ended our interview, he took his headphones off and said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I can't be there on Thursday." I'm like, "Great, we just spent an hour promoting it." So, but now, 3 months later, November 21st, you can come see Rich Scheidner, who is brilliant and so great. And Mike Lambert and Shelley Goldstein. Everybody knows Shelley Goldstein, brilliant comedian, funny woman singer. And then on the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend, we're doing Giving Thanks, a holiday cabaret with the Von Chapps. Now, the Von Chapps is Karen Benjamin and Alan Chapman, a very celebrated couple. They played Carnegie Hall. They played all over the place. They're major. He's a wonderful songwriter. They're killer performing duo, and they have really, really talented kids. And believe me, I'm not easily impressed with really, really talented kids. And they have two extraordinary kids. Their son Jake is a jazz vibraphonist who is at Columbia right now, and their daughter Molly is a singer-songwriter who I produce, who is super talented. And we're going to do an evening with the Von Chapps on the Saturday night of Thanksgiving weekend, November 30th. And then on December 8th, Molly once again. In May, we did a benefit for the Los Angeles Youth Network, which is a Hollywood-based organization that helps homeless teenagers. And Molly got a group of her friends, really, really talented teenage girls, and we had this event that was packed to the rafters and made a ton of money, and it was super fun. And we did it at the M Bar in May, and this time we're going to do it at Catalina's on December 8th. It's a brunch, and Catherine Gallagher, who is a rising singer-songwriter, she's just had a song featured in the movie Thanks for Sharing, is going to make a guest appearance in that too. So those are my commercials. Come out and see a real show, a live show. And now back to the group. I'm so excited to have Mr. Stevens here with us today. As I said, if you're familiar with the Los Angeles theater community over the last 20 years or so, you would know of Mr. Stevens' work. He is very, very popular reviewer and known for a yearly event where he bestowed the Robby Award, which was always so hilarious because he was the entire committee that decided the Robby Awards, and
we always had ties.
And yeah, so please tell us a little bit. Tell us about yourself, Rob.
Well, I came into reviewing from community theater as a performer, and this was back in 1973. I'm the grandpa of this group, I guess. Though I don't look it, thanks to my chipmunk cheeks. But anyway, there was a community theater magazine called Showcase Magazine that a woman named Pat Bittner published out in Fontana. And it covered all the community theaters that were in Southern California at that time. And I had performed in some community theaters in Pomona and in Colton, which is a suburb of San Bernardino. And I got invited to her annual party she had for the theaters in August of '73. And I had a little bit too much to drink. I accosted her because I was living in L.A. already, and I had season tickets for the Schubert and the Hartford in those days, the Amundsen and the Taper. And so I asked her why she didn't have reviews of the major shows. And she said that, that wasn't what she was doing. She didn't know anybody. She didn't know how to do it. So I said, I think I'm a writer. I want to try it. So she said, okay, go ahead. Later she told me, nice little drunk boy, in 6 months, and I'll never hear from you. In 6 months, half the magazine was my reviews from L.A.
Right.
So that's how I got started in reviewing. And she had an annual Showcase Magazine Awards every January. It was just a listing in the paper of all her different critics from around Southern California would list what they thought were the best performances, productions of the year from whatever theaters they covered. And she said I should do it for the professional theater that I was covering in L.A. And I didn't want to call it the Showcase Awards because she already had it. So Emmy, Grammy, Tony were all taken. So Robbie came into being. So that was 1974 was the first year those appeared. And for the first 10 years, they were just a listing in the paper that I wrote for at the time. then I decided I wanted to do my own awards show because I loved theater people. I loved getting free tickets. I didn't know that was possible when I started that. I was paying my own way in to see these shows. Then I discovered, you get free tickets. So I decided to have my own little party for the theater people. And we did it at a little neighborhood bar on Cahuenga here in Hollywood called the Continental Club, which was next door to the Continental Trailways bus station. And Lou Leonard was the one who started joking that if you lost, you got on the bus to Fresno. That was your prize for not winning. Right. But anyway, I had the first awards show there in March of '81. And I wanted to be like the Tonys, so I had a host and hostess. Albert Lord and Barbara Beckley from the Colony Theater were my first pairing.
Oh, wow.
And I had people that had won in the previous 10 years, like Nan Martin, Belinda Belaski, some other actors at the time, be my presenters. And then also I had performers from nominated shows that year. And every year it just kept getting bigger and bigger. I ended up at the Pasadena Playhouse, the Sportsman's Lodge, the Blossom Room, the Hotel Roosevelt. Went on for close to 18 years of an actual big show, 300-400 people in attendance.
Yeah, everybody always went. They were crazy popular, and celebrities would always come. I used to get the biggest kick out of it because it would be like Best Actress, Glenn Close in Sunset Boulevard, or Mary Jo Baker in Dames at Sea at the Downey Civic Light Opera, side by side, and Mary Jo would win or whatever. But Glenn Close, or some people like her, would come. I mean, it was hugely popular.
And in those categories, there'd be like 18 people in a category.
Right.
And I was the committee, the Robby Awards committee of one. And often we would have
Was there corruption in that?
No. and you could not buy a vote. You could not buy a vote. But it just kept growing every year, and everyone had so much fun. And I would have people that would come through like on a national tour, and I would see their performance, and they'd end up winning the award, and I'd find an address for them from Equity, send their award off to New York, get a note back from them saying, I love my little bus, because that's what it turned out to be.
Yeah,
excuse me.
Tell us that word.
And my trophy, my Robbie is next to my Tony Award on my mantelpiece. I said we were at the Continental Trailways bus station, and for the first 10 years, I only gave out frame certificates. I went to Aaron Brothers every January and bought like 40 frames for buy one get one for for a penny. So that's what I would do. But I had a friend come along and say, no, you need to have a trophy. And I never wanted the awards to be taken seriously. It was a fun family theater night. So I said, well, the only way I could have a trophy is it was a beat-up bus because of the Continental Trailways bus station. And we would have the comedy tragedy mask as the wheels. And a friend of mine designed it, and that was the award.
And I'm telling you, to this day, if you go to anybody in Los Angeles, any like well-known musical theater performer, any established musical theater performer in Los Angeles, their Robbie is right there in their music room on their fireplace and their bookshelf. It's right there.
Well, I had people like Joan Van Ark, Stephanie Zimbalist, Linda Pearl, Joan Van Ark, Gene Smart hosted for me one year.
Oh wow!
And they would come for the fun. They didn't come for the food because the food was often pretty bad, whatever I can afford from the whatever who was hosting, but the awards just kept growing and growing.
But the Blossom Room is pretty nice. I mean, that's
the Blossom Room was nice, and their food was nice.
Yeah, that's where they had the original Oscars.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was a great venue, but then I left town in 2003, and so the awards stopped.
And why did you go, and where did you go?
I decided when I grew up I wanted to be a producer.
Uh-huh.
And an old friend of mine from the old Equity Waiver Theater here in L.A. had left L.A. and gone up to Paso Robles and started a theater. And she knew I wanted to get into producing, and she said, come up here and produce for me. No money, as we know.
Right.
And so I did, and I was very proud because we did an amazing production of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, which had the first 2 Equity contracts north of San Luis Obispo.
Mm.
And I also, in January 2004, had the first cabaret act on the Central Coast, Clifford produced or
Yeah,
directed. I
directed,
guess,
Eileen.
directed Eileen Barnett in concert, and Eileen came up and performed for us for a weekend. San Luis Obispo paper did a 2-page article on us because cabaret was not done on the Central Coast, and I had people like Joan Van Ark, Amanda McBroom, Jane Johnston, Terry Ralston were all coming up later in that season.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, we had an earthquake up there, and the economy tanked, and Eileen was the only cabaret performer I was ever able to bring up there.
Oh.
So.
But it went well, right?
Yes, I mean, for never having cabaret up there, we had close to full houses both nights, and very enthusiastic audiences.
Yeah, it was a great act. I was very proud of it.
Yes.
And that's something that I think you and I have always shared, a mutual affection for Eileen. I know she was always one of your favorites.
Yeah, she was.
She
probably
performed or hosted or...
She performed probably every year.
Yeah. With Billy Barnes often.
Often with Billy. Billy
Yeah.
would write special material. Billy wrote me the Robby Award theme song.
Oh, really?
That Eileen and he and Michael G. Hawkins
Right.
performed for me. Yeah, it's just, I got into cabaret through Eileen because I interviewed her and Billy at the Gardenia. They were out in Westwood doing Billy Barnes Movie Star at the time.
Right.
And they wanted to do an interview, or they approached me for doing an interview, and we met at the Gardenia. I met Tom Rolla, and he said, well, you have to come and review.
Huh?
And the first person I reviewed there was Pam Myers. And it was just amazing, you know. And the way I got into reviewing also, or got my love for theater, I should say, is from Juliet Prowse. When I was in high school, I was in drama class, did the school play, had to see a couple plays to review during the year. But when I came to L.A. in '67, I saw Juliet Prowse in Sweet Charity at the Greek Theater, because they were doing live tours in those days of these musicals.
Right.
And I had no idea this is what theater could be compared to what I had seen back in my hometown in Pennsylvania. And so Juliet Prowse became my keystone, and I got to meet her like 15 years later. And when I told her the story and about what happened to my career as a reviewer, she says, "You can never tell what's going to happen when someone's out in the audience when you perform." And so we became friends from that. But it's just, live theater is really special because, as we talked earlier, if you don't see it that night, it's gone, because the next performance can be totally different. Someone in the cast can be off, the audience can be off. It differs, and that's what's so exciting compared to television or film, because that's never going to change.
Right. And I also think about like what happened with Elliot and happening to sit by Peter Levy.
Right,
Levy. Was a life-changing thing for you. I mean, you were just there
It certainly was. It was an amazing moment that changed my life.
And those are the kind of things that happen I suppose in anything that gets people out amongst them. But that, to me, that's why I love the nightclub world so much. Specifically, I guess it happens if you go to theaters or if you go to restaurants a lot. But there's just something about the nightclub world. I've encountered every strata of society. I've encountered super VIP people and super, barely had the $5 to be there.
Life is a cabaret.
Old chum.
Old chum.
Indeed. So Robby, where after Paso Robles? Where did we pick up?
It didn't work out up there. Like I said, there was no money in the producing, and there wasn't much economy up there either. I earned my living as an accountant. And so I moved to San Diego because I used to review a lot of San Diego theater from L.A. And I always liked it down there. So I moved down there in 2004. And I did review down there for the first few years. But, the economy's changing. The publications are going out of whack, And again, I want to produce. I've created a couple of musical reviews that I would like to get produced. And like I said, that's what I want to do when I grow up, is be a producer.
Right.
So I'm coming back to L.A. now.
And now you're coming back to L.A.
Next week, actually. And hopefully something produced there.
I'm glad that we could use this event here to sort of mark your doorway back.
Thank you for inviting
to the
me.
scene. So, Jonathan, do you have any interest in producing?
I don't. No, I don't know. I mean, it's. I feel like life is about. I feel like my life is sort of like Forrest Gump, like where opportunities come my way, and then you jump on them and magic can happen. That means meeting different people that can change your life, or like that, or opportunities. And there's never really been an opportunity to do that. I really love writing so much and being a journalist and doing this that, I mean, I've written books and I tried writing some novels when I was little, in the 90s.
Tell me about that. I read that in your bio.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's kind of like, okay, when I was writing and not as successful and had more time in my hands, and you could work and develop those things. But now you can do self-publishing, and there's ways to get things out there. But they have been so busy with the work that people hire me to do that. And when I started trying to be a writer, I was trying to write sitcoms, and you're writing spec scripts and hoping people like them. And it's kind of like after you get the people loving what you do, even if perhaps the payoff with the other would be so much greater if you did. But I don't want to be like getting rejection letters when I'm in my late 40s that I got when I was 20 writing a Cheers spec. So it's part of that. But opportunities haven't really come my way. If someone said, I think I would probably be a good music producer and a show producer. I just haven't had someone, with an opportunity. I think when you're seen as a writer, it's hard for them to, and if they see me do karaoke, they know I'm not going to be a professional singer. But I'm like, there's that ham part of me that's personable, and I probably would be good at it. I just haven't had the opportunity or thought about it too much.
Well, you are very much man about town. We are Facebook friends since the Lauren Project.
Yes.
And you're everywhere.
You get invited to things when you're that man about town, and the thing is, though, like he said a lot, like about the freebies, you get in it for that. Like, I can see the show for free, and you're excited, and then you feel like, okay, but you get invited to more than you can actually do, and then when you go, you always feel like I have to write some stuff, and I haven't done like literal live reviews or had a real outlet for that in a while, and so sometimes what I'll do is I'll say, just because they're a nice person, like I did with Mark's show, is write like a blurb that they can use with my associations to help promote them. I'm happy to do that for that, but there's a lot of just great music and a lot of opportunities, and so I get to see a lot of things. So that mostly by invitation or just because your name's out there and people want to know what you think of everything. So that's a great part of that. That's a perk,
Elliot, you look like you have something to say.
Yeah, I did, and I just forgot it. Like he said, I'm embarrassed. Go on.
Oh, you really forgot?
I really forgot.
All right.
Clifford, I have something.
Yes.
We were talking earlier about the power of the press.
Yes.
And I remember the first interview, my first review that I wrote that did that was my first Equity Waiver show I saw at the Met Theater on Poinsettia and Melrose. They were doing a production of Dark at the Top of the Stairs. And they had been running for a couple months already when I saw them, because I just started reviewing the 99-seat theaters at that time. And in my review, I mentioned that the leading man had a bad habit of doing all this business in front of his face, and it was distracting. And I actually wrote that because I didn't come from a writing, reviewing. I came from a theater aspect of reviewing. So I mentioned that in my review. Well, I had the actor call me when the review came out, thanking me for mentioning that, because he had gotten lazy.
Right.
And the director wasn't around anymore after a couple of months to tell him. And no one else in the cast was telling him, because he was the star. But, so I went, wow, someone reads my stuff and they take it to heart. And it was just, wow, it really, that was my first thing, that this is power.
That's the thing I discover. It's funny when people will come up with mostly positive things, and you realize what you're writing is actually seen by people. Like, you're just sitting in your jammies or your shorts on your computer talking on the phone, and you're writing and throwing it out, emailing, and going, oh, like, people read this? Oh, it's great. Like, wow. I thought,
but over the years, I've figured out that people are going to read it about themselves, and so I usually try to start the reviews with a few positive comments that they can excerpt if they want.
I know that Jonathan has said that he goes out of his way to be positive.
As much as possible. Yeah, I don't
Do
like to
you
do
ever? Do you ever like
There have
say
been a few,
this
but
is the worst
I'm
thing
going
ever?
to tell you what happens in the jazz community. It's kind of tight.
Yeah.
One time they got an album that was really, really bad, and someone wanted me to review it, and I did. And then when you see that person again, it's not like someone you're friendly with really, but he saw me and oh yeah, like you go and shake his hand, it's like
Yeah.
people
You're
remember
the
that bad
review.
review, but when you do a good review, people just like it. They'll come up
Right.
to me 10 years after I wrote something. I kind of remember the name, but I won't remember what I wrote. And they'll say, "Oh, this is the greatest thing." I'm like, I hope I said something positive, because when you do a lot of work, it comes in and out. There's so much you don't remember every specific detail, but it makes a difference in people's
Right.
lives. It's nice. So I like to be positive.
Yeah, I
constructive.
also decided early on that accentuating the positive was a good thing, especially now that I sing a little bit and have done a show, been on the other side of the mic. I understand better what they're going through up there, and so I take that into account when I do a review. And if there's something negative, I will put it in the middle and couch it in as kind words as I can. Usually I'm a little more selective in who and what I review now, and so usually I know what I'm going to get pretty much, and I enjoy it, so it isn't hard. The easiest reviews to write are when you enjoyed the show and you just sit there and write them, and you do 450 words in 25 minutes or something. And the ones that the shows you don't like as well are very hard to write, because you have to figure out a nice way to say something.
And the consequences of your behavior.
For me, it was just always the opposite. If I really, really loved something, that was more difficult, because I didn't want to sound too much of a
Effusive.
Pollyanna.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was the producer. But those negative reviews, which I didn't write that many, but when they did, it just flowed. I would be finished.
they're
15, 20 minutes. I'd have a whole review, 700 words, whatever, Those were the easiest to write, because it just...
The fun.
So you would give a bad review.
Yes, I never went into it saying I only wanted to be positive.
Right.
I went into it sort of like a consumer advocate.
Right.
I mean, I was getting free tickets, but other people were going to have to pay.
Right.
And if something was really bad, I wanted to warn them off.
Very interesting.
But the same thing, if it was really good, I wanted them to buy those tickets and go.
Right.
So I would be as much positive as I could. But if it was bad, I would say stay away from this. Has no business on. People have quoted me some of my negative reviews. Those are the most fun ones.
It is a very interesting dynamic when you are ongoing. It's not like you can hit and run. When you're a known person in a fixed community,
Right.
a fixed community of cabaret artists, a fixed community of jazz artists, a fixed community of actors, nobody's going anywhere, and you still go to stuff, and you
Right.
still run into
Well, and
everybody.
that's it.
and-
That's one thing I never completely understood about actors reading their reviews. If they loved me and believed what I said when I gave them a positive review, if I told them
Yeah.
this show wasn't up to their usual standards,
Right.
they would get all upset. And I'm going, well, I'm seeing it from the same perspective, but they know if they're in the show, it's the best thing out there at the moment.
Right.
One of the reasons I think I've been successful segueing as much as I have into PR writing that
Right.
people is because it's all positive.
Right.
The fun part is when it's something you really hate, like but you're hired to write something nice, and
Right.
it's kind of more of a challenge that way. And
Right.
and a lot of it, when you're writing about contemporary jazz or smooth jazz, I always say the hardest part of the job is trying to make music that sounds essentially very similar, trying to come up with new adjectives. I mean, there's only so many.
Right.
And, funky, groove, and cooking. I mean, whatever. There's only so many words in the English language to describe an emotion, so it's a challenge. But positive is easier, and I think that might have led to people thinking, oh, I think you could do that. So that's how I built up that side of the career.
And that's
It's been a
part
good
of
thing.
when I'm reviewing a show and I'm sitting there in the dark taking notes. Mostly what I'm writing down is adjectives so that I don't have to make them up later. I'm in the moment and saying, oh, he sounds warm, or she sounds perky, or something, and that helps write the review much quicker.
Right. Well, I'm afraid that our time is almost gone,
Yeah.
and I just would like to go around the room one quick time for anybody if they have any final thoughts. I always like to give everybody an opportunity to give final thoughts. I find you, in concept, to be a very important part of the world of the nightclub, because you are the receiving hand of what people do, what people spend their energy and their time and their love and their dedication and their money to make happen. And without you guys there to reflect on it, it often doesn't reach an audience. It often doesn't get to the next place of broadcast or publicity that it needs to get to make any money, to make any validation. So I think, and as I know each of you personally, each of you are very good practitioners of that. So thank you for being here, representing that. Rob, any last words?
It's kind of strange because I'm moving back here from San Diego next week, and I have 2 more shows to review down there. My first show reviewing back in LA will be a cabaret show. Michael Kearns, an old friend of mine, is doing his first cabaret show ever.
Wow.
And I have to be there for that because I've seen Michael do stage plays for 35 years or so.
Where's it going to be?
At someplace in Silver Lake. I can't think of the title. I've never heard of this.
Casito de Campo, probably.
No, it's a different name.
Rockwell?
No.
All right, well, we'll find it. Look for Michael Kearns. All right. Great. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
We welcome back. As the Los Angeles theatrical community, I welcome you back. Jonathan.
One thing that's really nice about something like this is every so often you get busy with your work and your day-to-day, and you sometimes forget to take stock in the big picture. Talking to you guys beforehand and here, it just makes me realize, it's been an interesting journey, and I'm grateful for the work I do, and I feel blessed or lucky, whatever, to be able to do it and just know people like this and have this opportunity to get to know someone like you. I want to, continue that and see more of your shows. But it just reminds me kind of why I got into that and why I enjoy it so much.
Great. Mr. Zwiebach, Elliot.
During the day, I'm a news reporter for a trade publication, and I'm very objective, regardless of the subject, and there's no opinion in what I write. And so it's fun, and it's a change late in life to be able to express an opinion on what I observe or what I feel about something, and that's part of what makes reviewing fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for being here with me today.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank my associate producer, Tricia Trippett, our visitor, Lynn, and the Global Voice Broadcasting Operations Manager, and my personal in-studio engineer, Gabe Harder. Thank you, Gabe. And we'll see you all next week.
And so it seems that we have met before and laughed before and loved before, but who knows?